So I'm gonna make this video. This is gonna be a cool video. This is gonna be talking about Black Sabbath, and then also talk about how Black Sabbath is the most ripped off band out there, and then also talk about the genre of doom, psych, stoner rock, which is generally what Sabbath influenced. Okay, if you've been following the news about Black Sabbath, they might actually reunite again to play a couple of shows in England. I actually think they should go farther than that and actually record an album, because we never really got closure, right? We need closure, God damn it, we need closure. We need closure. This guitar, like I said, this is the kind of the quintessential Black Sabbath sound guitar. This is the SG Special. I'm going through that, that tiny orange amp that we talked about, which is like a 3-inch speaker. I'm actually using that to record my song as one of the guitars. So if time permits, we'll talk about that, okay? Also, which is crazy. So it gives this raunchy sound. That amp, if you're a guitar player, look at this. Now, although it's not going to give you that creamy sort of sound, right? It's a good sort of approximation. This right here almost sounds exactly like the album. Right? So, and of course, you've seen Tony Iommi use orange amps. It's in the videos. You can see an orange stack clearly there. But we don't know if he actually used it on the first album or when he actually switched to Lady, because there's a lot of videos that show him, those promo videos that show him use that amp. So I am going to use that amp. I just want to talk about that sound for a second. But anyway, yeah, I think that should be great to have Bill Ward back in there, because it's not Sabbath, without Bill Ward. I did a video where I said one of the key influences of mine, I'm just saying, when I say these things, I'm just saying that I'm just praising their talent. That's all, right? I'm not trying to bring attention to myself and be like, oh yes, one of my influence, as if I've accomplished anything. I've accomplished nothing. I know that. So I'm just letting you know that when I say these things, I'm praising them and not trying to bring attention to myself. People tend to misunderstand this because there's so much jealousy and there's so much racism and all this kind of shit happening, where they don't expect somebody like me to even talk about this, right? So anyway, Bill Ward's drumming, I was going to say, I made a video about that, where he has an orchestral style of drumming, right? Orchestral style means that you'll have to ask him what it means, because there's no reference to it at all on the internet, except the video that I put, which I kind of read a few articles that he had posted, and then interviews, and then I digested what I could from that, right? So it's the style of drumming where it's not a beat type of drumming. It's not going to be like ticka-da, 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 if you can help it. Now, there's some songs in Sabbath that have that, right? But a lot of songs, it's more feel-oriented, to where it's like he reacts to the bass player, he reacts to the... So that is the element of Black Sabbath that's missing, to where 13 just didn't have that element, right? So even Ozzy said that. Ozzy said that guy is a great drummer, the guy that played on 13, but he ain't Bill Ward, right? So that should be really good. So I think that if they do a couple of shows, I would say do like 6 songs, do an EP. We desperately need closure, Sabbath fans, and I'm sure that any Sabbath fan would agree, is that we need a final album with with sort of the heavy metal's Fab Four, to where it's like we need that, So and I don't want to expand on that too much. I think you know what I'm talking about, right? We need something like that, because we just need that closure. We just need that. I think 13 is good. It's kind of long. The songs are kind of long, but I think even Sabbath members themselves said it's not really a Sabbath album. It's cool, but we need Bill Ward, because he adds that element in there, which makes it Black Sabbath, I think. So I'm excited for that. I hope that show happens. I hope they record an EP of 6 songs at least, if not an album, at least 4 songs, couple of songs, you know what I mean? So I'm going to segue this into how Black Sabbath has influenced basically the genre that's really popular today, which is basically what they call, it's kind of this hodgepodge thing of like doom, stoner rock, psychedelic doom, right? Like psych, they call it psych, stoner, and then doom. So all these sort of genres were basically inspired by Black Sabbath. I would say Master of Reality is basically the first sort of, it's almost like the first grunge album, because Soundgarden, the guitar player Kim, he plays this exactly. He's influenced by Tony Iommi, and then it basically sounds just like Sabbath, basically. Almost like Dio Sabbath. Chris Cornell is obviously influenced by Dio. Even Dio himself said that. Geezer Butler said that in an old interview that, the only band that's doing kind of what we're doing is Soundgarden. So Soundgarden's basically like Black Sabbath meets the Beatles. I think even Dave Grohl made that reference, right? So they've influenced basically the grunge thing, because it's that kind of that sad overtone with Ozzy being, that kind of agony, right? He sings in that agony, right? But I think this should be good if they reunite and then maybe even do like some kind of, EP. That'll be good for us. So I hope they do that. And then, like I said, so they've influenced that whole genre. And, this is kind of sad to talk about, because I believe Tony Iommi is the most ripped off guitar player, I would say, right? He's like the most ripped off guitar player, because there are literally 50,000 bands that sound just like Black Sabbath. I swear to God, right? I think the other thing we should talk about is that it's not that there's no new music. There are tons of new music out there. It's just that you don't care, right? There's so many bands out there. There's an Italian label out there. And because, as I was recording my own kind of Sabbath influenced band, and then I was kind of, looking into this, and, all these bands sound the same. This is why I didn't want to do it, because I didn't want to be 50 million and one, band that's, again, doing a Sabbath ripoff. But then the other thing for me is that I kind of like got to a point, with my father's death and everything like that, to where it's just like, well, just put it out there for fun, and I do everything here by myself, right? Just put it out there for fun. But when I was kind of listening to these bands, it's so unfortunate that they all sound the same. And the new trend in these bands seems to be that, and I don't know why this is, probably one band started doing it and everybody's kind of copying that band, is that, again, Black Sabbath is influential because of the singer, because of Ozzy, right? And other, like Dio, the good singers that they've had, right? So you take that away and it's just not the same. So what I'm seeing in this trend, I don't know who started this, but it sounds like they want to just turn the singer down as much as possible. And then it's like the music is here, and the singer's like in the other room, and the door's closed. So that's how far back in the mix the singer is. Probably because, they probably suck, right? And they don't want to put it, in front of the mix and turn it up. Because the singer has a connotation where once you get a singer involved in the band, right, it's all about the singer. So maybe they don't want that type of attention for the singer, and maybe they want it to be more about music. But anyway, that's one thing that I saw was the vocals are like, it's like almost like somebody outside this room singing, and the music and the band is in here. So in my band, obviously it won't be like that. It'll be the vocals will be up front, just like Sabbath, right? So that's the thing, is the unfortunate thing is that there are so many bands out there, like 50,000 bands, literally, right? And they've all ripped off the Sabbath sound. I would almost say that Black Sabbath is probably the most ripped off band. You don't see too many bands that are like Iron Maiden ripoffs, right? There's a few, but not really, right? We're talking original bands, right? We're not talking about cover. So, but that Black Sabbath sound, basically all of grunge has ripped that off, right? The Melvins, right? They kind of sound like Black Sabbath, and they influence all those other bands, all those other grunge bands, right? And that right there, and then all the stoner rock, they all sound like Black Sabbath. So probably one of the most influential bands, for that people have copied, right? Because you don't hear about, even though Megadeth and Metallica are popular, right? You don't really hear about too many bands that have copied their style, right? How many do you know, right? Not that many. So Iron Maiden, same thing, great band, but not too many bands have copied that style. Not too many modern bands. But Sabbath, so many bands have copied it. So when I listen to like what, just to see what's out there, so I mean, I don't like listening to new music because I write music, right? So I don't want to be influenced by anything, else, I guess. So I listened to some of this stuff. Like I said, it all sounds the same. All these bands sound the same. I found this Italian label and went through all their bands, and then heard like 10 seconds of it. I'm like, every single band sounds the same. And then it's that same format where it sounds like the vocalist is in the other room, because they don't understand that the vocalist is the one who gives the band an identity, right? So anyway, I thought that was kind of weird. So the point, the vocalist bit. The point here is that I think so many bands have ripped off that Sabbath sound, and I didn't want to be 50 million and one, but again, I was just like, I think I could do something different than none of these bands are doing. So, but one important point here, and I know this might not sit well with you, is that some people don't like 13, Black Sabbath, right? Because it doesn't sound like the first, those 8 albums, right? And I thought about this for a long time, and I'm going to actually, explain it to you, because I think I figured this out. So, why doesn't 13 sound like any of the first 8 albums? Why can't Tony Iommi, write a riff like, for some reason it sounds like shit today. I don't know. But, why can't Tony Iommi write a riff like that? Was my question. Did he, can't he write it anymore? Has he been creatively exhausted? And I thought about this for a long time. So the person that hasn't given it that much thought will say that, oh wait, he's just, he's done, right? He's written so many riffs, he's done. So I thought the same thing. Then when I started writing my music, and then looking into all these, 50 million stoner rock bands that ripped off Sabbath, I realized something. That it's not that Tony Iommi can't write another song like Snowblind, or another song like any of the great songs, right, of Volume 4 or Sabbath by Sabbath or anything like that. It's that so many people have ripped off that sound that if they write a song like that today, right, there's a possibility that it's going to sound like some other song that's out there. And they can't do that from their, from their point of view. They don't want to be put in that situation. I'll give you an example. So I started a band here, and I actually found a drummer and a bass player, right? This was about 3 years ago. And then I played guitar and sang, which is kind of impossible to do for Sabbath, but I tried it anyway. We even played Into the Void. I wrote 2 songs just like Sabbath. I mean, inspired by Sabbath, right? This was 3 years ago. Those songs are gone. And then I took it to the band, and then one of the guys said, this style sounds like so-and-so band. And I was like, it's a band that I've never even heard of. Never heard of that band. I've heard of the name, but I never sat down and listened to that band. But then he said, this sounds like something like they would do. So that's my point here exactly, is that you're influenced by Black Sabbath, and you have these 50 million bands that are parallel. They're not thinking beyond Sabbath. They're in parallel, imitating like, okay, wait, can I write a song like Sabbath by Sabbath? Can I write a song like Snowblind? And they've sort of exhausted that well to where an original song that I wrote, somebody else is saying, well, you sound like that band. And I don't even know who this band is. Do you understand what I'm saying? So that's probably the dilemma that their Sabbath is aware of, is that so many bands are, so Tony Iommi today, my point is that he can't come in here, I'll write a riff right now. Nothing is rehearsed, I'm just going to write a riff, right? He can't write a basic riff like this, because, not that he can't, but because it would basically, he has to do something different. Do you understand what I'm saying? So he wouldn't just come in and be like, that could be a riff that I just came up with, that riff right now, right? I could write a song based on that. Kind of sounds like, this riff. I kind of just made it simple. But I could use that riff, but I'm not going to. But this is the kind of stuff that people are doing. Do you understand my logic here? So you have 50 million bands doing stuff like that, to where if Tony Iommi comes in here and does that, someone's going to say, oh wait, this sounds like this band, and who wants to sound like a band that they influenced? So therefore, he has to try to take this to a new territory. That's why 13 sounds different. So it's not going to have these basic riffs, because those riffs have already been sort of mined out. Now, he could come up with something new, but there's a possibility it might sound like something else. And, you know, so they have to forge forward and write something more complicated. So the thing here is that they have to be original and move forward in a different direction, right? So that's why. So I've just explained to you why New Sabbath is not going to sound like Old Sabbath. Is because too many people have copied, you know, that sort of style.